vehicle, and regardless of fault, they pay up to a level. Before, I used to recommend only get $1,000 or $2,000 in coverage, but everybody knows with health insurance going, out of pocket, your deductible, your out of pocket's going up. Now a lot of people have $5,000, $2,500, $3,000. Utilize your medical pay. So if you're in an accident, because your bills don't get paid as you go along, you use your medical pay to pay the parts that aren't paid by your health insurance. At the end of the case, they get paid back. So you don't have to worry. So I would get at least $5,000 to cover it, so during the accident you don't have that out-of-pocket expense.
Okay, we do have a question from Jerry in Peoria. He says, why should my insurance pay for any bills if it wasn't my fault, and will it make my insurance go up?
Well, the second question, it should not. So like with medical pay, if I'm in an accident, someone else causes the accident, and I turn in the bills to them and they pay $3,000. At the end of the case, they get paid back. What people don't realize, since Illinois is a fault state, and we've talked about this before, the other side who caused the accident, their insurance company does not pay as you go along. They only pay when you sign on the dotted line. So if you don't want to have that leverage or those bills hanging over you, you utilize whatever insurance you have to pay. At the end, they get paid back. Plus, the medical providers, they don't care if you have a case. They want to be paid now. So they don't have to wait, because your case might take a year, 15 months. They don't want to wait. Plus, it's a lot harder to get into the doctor when you have an outstanding bill. So that's why you want to use your own insurance. It should not affect your rates.
Should not affect your rates.
It should not affect your rates at all. They get paid back at the end.
We have another question from Susan in Morton. She asks, do I have to let the insurance company get my prior medical records?
Well, you do not have to let them do that. That's the first thing I would tell you. But, you don't have to let them get your records, but it is reasonable that if you are claiming an injury, and let's say you have back pain, they're going to want to make sure you weren't having problems last week or beforehand. So, generally, it is not unreasonable for them to want to see your records. Now, if I'm your lawyer, I get the records before a lawsuit, and I review them, and I'm not going to disclose personal information and things that shouldn't be. But I also use those prior records to show that it wasn't there before. It was caused by this accident. And the other thing is, in Illinois, if you have an accident and you have a pre-existing condition, if the accident makes it worse, it's the same as causing it. So you don't have to be afraid of a prior injury. You embrace it, you tell the doctor and them about it and how it's different or injured.
We do have one more question before we have to go to break from Tom in Pekin. I was hit and broke my leg and had surgery. How much is that worth?
Well, that would be significant. It would depend. Did you have surgery? So, that's kind of a very
He said he did have surgery, but
sorry about that. All right, what surgery? Do you have hardware? How long were you off work? What are your medical bills? Is there pain and suffering? Are there lost wages? Is there future surgery involved?
A lot goes into it.
So there's a lot more that goes into it, but it would be a very significant case. It's something you definitely should talk to some lawyer about, because it is going to have significant value if you've already had surgery and incurred those bills.
And I know we do have to take a break, but real quick, I know one point you wanted to get across is that everybody should consult their local insurance agent.
It's, you've seen the commercials for the holiday and everything. You talk to somebody locally, someone you can ask questions, because you can't get it in this TV show, what is MedPay? But ask your agent, look it up, what's MedPay, what's underinsured, what do I need, and then review it yearly. That's what I do.
And they'll have a better idea of how much insurance coverage you need, too.
Typing it in on the computer in 5 seconds is not going to give you the advice, and you need a professional.
All right, thanks. Chris Doscotch, and we will be right back with more. Stick around.
Serious and catastrophic injury victims' ability to be fully compensated is almost always limited by the available insurance coverage. In my first month as a lawyer, 22 years ago, I learned this lesson. My client was in a very serious accident. He incurred over $300,000 in medical bills, couldn't return to his job, had future medical, pain and suffering, and severe disability. the at-fault or negligent driver, the person who caused the accident, only had $20,000 in insurance coverage, the state minimum. My client had $50,000 in under-insured motorist coverage. Under-insured motorist coverage is coverage through your own company that provides extra insurance in the event that the person who caused it had too little insurance, like this case. So my client only received $50,000 for this life-altering event that was not his fault. $20,000 from the at-fault driver and $30,000 from his own company after the deductions were taken. My client learned this lesson too late. Since that time, I've been telling my clients, my friends, my family, how important it is to talk with a local insurance agent each year to go over your coverages and your underinsured to make sure that you and your family are properly protected. For more information, visit my website, doscotchlaw.com. Okay.
Welcome back to Ask the Attorney. I'm Stacey Campbell. I'm joined by Chris Doscotch. And just real quick, an apology. We did have some technical difficulties at the beginning of the show. So if you're joining us, thanks so much for being here. We've been talking about auto insurance and how much coverage we should have. We're going to switch gears here a little bit and talk about the cell phone, talking on your cell phone while you're driving versus drunk driving, because there's some interesting studies out there.
Right. It was... and I think you might talk about it earlier. We were talking about cell phones. It's coming up, distracted driving, people wanting cell phone records, what's causing accidents. So there's a person in Utah has done many studies that has really found that through very good study that there's really no difference at .08. Now, we're not talking about...
That's the legal alcohol limit,
correct,
right? Okay.
The minimum legal intoxication amount compared to talking on a cell phone hands-free.
Okay, so you've got your Bluetooth or whatever you have, hands-free, not holding the phone, and there's really no difference?
And they found that both are dangerous.
Wow.
A drunk at .08, you're more aggressive, you drive a little faster, but less accidents. They found that people talking on the cell phone under the same conditions actually had more accidents. So in terms of causing accidents, that talking on the cell phone was more risky, or at least as risky as something that you could end up in jail for, paying thousands in fines for.
Yeah.
And so it's something that we're grappling with as lawyers, because all my clients want to know, you know, were they on the phone?
We actually have a question about that very thing. Ken in Peoria says, if the person who hit me was on their cell phone, do they have to pay more?
Yes or no. It will depend on the circumstances.
Okay.
Remember, it's legal.
Yeah.
So technically not. We all, I mean, not everybody does, but I can't say I'm not guilty of talking on a phone and driving. Okay? So I think it would depend on the circumstances. Now, obviously, if you're texting or doing something really egregious on your phone, you could get hit with punitive damages and beyond the normal, and you could pay more. And I think it goes to explaining how the accident occurred, and it could get you a little bit more in the case. But on the other hand, what's the person going to say? It's legal.
How do they prove that you're on your phone, too?
Well, first, eyewitnesses. You could admit it to the police. If you get the cell phone bill, if you call me right away, we send a letter, preserve the cell phone records. We send that to the company so they keep the tower records. But I can't get the records by writing to them. You have to have a court subpoena. There's some privacy rules for it. So I may not even have them. Then you'll get a bill and it'll have a time. Well, that doesn't mean that's the exact time the accident happened. So you have to do some legwork. Call what number were they on with right around that time? Was that person talking to him when the accident happened to confirm what was going on? So there's multiple ways you can prove it. Sometimes it's circumstantial. Sometimes it's direct. Someone saw them on the phone. But that's something that we do. If you come in right away, you send out a letter to preserve the records. And if we file suit, we always subpoena the cell phone records, which will include texting and if the phone was in data usage too.
Okay, all right. And we want to remind people to call in and ask your questions. The number is 698-3742, 698-3742. We've got Chris Doscotch, personal injury lawyer. Anything else you wanted to say about cell phones, distracted driving?
And I did want to say one other thing, because the point of the study wasn't get off your phone, because it's very hard for people in these times. But one thing that was interesting, you know, because I've told my kid to do this now, put your phone in your backpack and keep it in the trunk when you're driving, because there's some kids around here doing that, because talking hands-free is not any different than holding the phone to your ear. The studies have shown that. It's the same. So that law isn't really...
Right.
I mean, you shouldn't be pressing any buttons, but the law isn't really... Doing this is the same thing. It's just you're still distracted for long periods of time. And I thought that was very interesting that they found there was absolutely no distinction between the two.
It really is.
So we think we're safer because we're hands-free.
Not so much.
And we're not. So it's just something, how do you balance needing to be on the phone, using, because we have less time, you're trying to get multitask, versus trying to be safe.
That's a good tip, to put it in your backpack, or for ladies, you know, put it in your purse and put your purse in the back seat so you can't reach it.
I haven't said, you know, for me getting there, I'm working on it, and I do try to improve, but I told my son that. I mean, I'm talking to him about why that's important, especially when they're younger drivers.
Yeah, because they don't know. Here's another question from Jason. He says, I was hit on the front corner of the driver's side of my car. My airbag didn't deploy. Can I sue for that?
You can always sue. You can sue for anything that you want to. That doesn't mean the case is successful.
Okay.
So that's the first thing. Secondly, it would be a product liability case, which is a little bit different than an auto accident case. That is not something I generally engage in.
Okay.
For anyone to take a case for an airbag not deploying, because this happens frequently, unless you're very seriously injured, and you can show that the airbag not deploying had anything to do with your serious injuries, you're going up against companies that are going to spend $50, $100, hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're not going to pursue that case.
Right.
So it kind of would depend on, just not going off is not a case. You would have to have a lot of other things going on.
All right. Here's a question from Joan in Lewiston. I was involved in a car accident which was not my fault. The insurance company offered me $6,400, but I owe over $8,000. Is there anything I can do?
Okay. So that must be on property damage. So you get in a car wreck and you have a loan. I assume she has a loan for that. In Illinois, if your car is damaged, you only get the value that it's worth at the time, the fair market value.
Okay.
So if you're upside down on your loan or you owe more on your loan, they don't have to pay for it. That's another thing you can talk to your agent about. If that's something you're worried about, you could purchase gap insurance, which will cover that.
Okay.
But other than that, you cannot collect what you owe on the loan. So you could pay off what they give you if that's a fair value, and you're still going to owe that remaining amount, and the other driver is not responsible for that loan amount. Okay.
So that would just be a situation you just want to get enough coverage to cover yourself for situations
right, and
like
that's something you can talk about with your agent if it's important to you. Another tip is, a lot of times what will happen, and this might work for you, is talk to the person who's selling your car.
Okay.
They want to sell you another vehicle.
Yeah.
So you don't want to keep ending up upside down, but a lot of times then they'll roll some of that loan into another vehicle. That might work for you if you're in that situation.
Okay. All right. And again, we are talking to Chris Doscotch here on Ask the Attorney. And so if you have a question, please give us a call. The number is on the bottom of your screen. I think we're going to take another break here, and we'll come back with more.
At Doscotch Law, we believe it is important to meet with your lawyer face-to-face. We also know that it is not always possible. We now offer Skype service so that we can meet with our clients anytime, even after business hours. It is really the next best thing to being there. My office uses technology to better communicate, meet your needs, and value your time. The client is our #1 priority. Visit doscotchlaw.com to schedule your appointment.
Don't wait until a tragedy to find out your insurance coverage was not enough. Contact your local insurance agent to review your policies and determine if a serious accident happens, are you underinsured.
I'm attorney Chris Doscotch. The right insurance coverage and the right attorney can affect the outcome of your case and your life. My ability to advocate for you can be limited if you do not have enough insurance coverage.
Brought to you by the law offices of Chris Doscotch.
Extremely important in workers' compensation, very important right now because it's a very difficult environment. And like we were talking about with the cell phone records, if you're injured in an auto accident, we're fighting more than ever over cases. and preserving evidence, being proactive, getting 911 tape, getting witness statements, not giving statements to the insurance company. Those types of things, I think, are even more pressing now than they were 22 years ago. And I always said being an aggressive lawyer isn't yelling.
Yeah.
It's thinking ahead. What is going on in the case? What do I have to do? And trying to be proactive instead of always reacting. And when people come in later or, they don't think they need a lawyer and then they come in, that's when you're being reactive, and makes it much more difficult.
We do have a question, anonymous, from somebody who was injured at work a year ago. Everything was taken care of by work comp, but their knee is hurting again. Can I ask them to pay for more testing? I have not settled my case.
Yes, you can ask if your case is not settled or closed, because generally if you settle a workers' compensation case, the case is closed.
Okay.
So if it's not, you can go back to the doctor. They're going to say, you haven't been to the doctor. How do we know this is still related to your other condition?
Okay.
So you might need your doctor to say, go see the doctor and say, hey, this is still from this accident.
Okay.
And as long as the doctor says there's still a relationship between treatment now and the accident then if they don't want to pay it, then you have grounds to go to court to get them to pay for it.
Okay. Question from Caroline. I was hurt at work. My company wants me to go see a doctor. Can I just go see my family doctor? Or I guess maybe do you have to go to the doctor they want you to see, or you can go to whatever doctor you want?
Well, you don't have to go to the doctor they want you to see unless you're in a union that requires it, or there's some places of employment that have occupational health departments, or company like Caterpillar has a medical physician, and part of their employment agreement, they have to go to the doctor at the facility. That's fine.
Okay.
That's what they have. But the law doesn't require you in work comp. You have to go to the company doctor. That's a separate. But in Illinois, you still have the right, and that's one thing they're trying to change in Illinois, you still have the right to go to your own doctor. I recommend going to your own doctor.
Oh, yeah.
They know you better.
Yeah.
You want an independent opinion. That doesn't mean the other opinion's always bad, but you want an independent opinion, and then they can make the necessary referrals if you need it for testing or to whatever. So I would say even if you're going to the company doctor, I tell people always go to your own family doctor as well.
Okay. Second opinion. Never
Second
hurts to
opinion.
have a second opinion, right? Tyler in Washington has a question. My brother was in a bad accident. The person who caused it only had $50,000 in insurance, and that's what's being offered. Why?
Well, that's because that's all the
That's all they
insurance.
have.
If you come in again and you have a lawyer, one of the things we certify is that all the insurance you have, and then they have to send the policy because we want to verify that it's the right. That's truly all there is.
Right.
And if they don't have underinsured above $50,000, you can always go after the person who caused the accident, but only in a few circumstances can you not take bankruptcy, and the realistic nature of trying to collect from someone personally is not very easy. So likely you're going to be limited to $50,000 and then trying to divide that up with the medical providers or whoever gets money back to try and get some recovery.
So this kind of goes back to the beginning of the show when you were talking about most people don't have enough liability insurance. So go over those numbers again. What should people have?
So if that person there had $100,000 in underinsured coverage and the other driver had $50,000, they'd at least have another $50,000 in additional coverage.
Right.
And so then you can go, let's say the group health insurance paid the bills. You can go to them and say, hey, there's limited money here. Can you guys take less money? And you can try to work something out. And frequently, that's one of the most important things I do is trying to make it so. Because if you're in an accident, you don't want to pay your doctor, your health insurance, and your lawyer, and then the client. I mean, that's not the point of it. The point is to try and compensate somebody for their injuries.
Right.
But if there isn't much insurance, it's very challenging no matter how serious your case is.
Yeah. Caitlin has a question. What is the most amount of car insurance I can get? I mean, is the sky the limit?
Well, I think you could probably purchase anything. I carry, like $1 million underinsured, and then you can have an umbrella for millions, depending on what you're protecting yourself for. Is it a business, your individual, your assets? Obviously, the higher the liability amount, the more you... So you don't want to get $4 million in coverage if you don't have the assets for it. It doesn't. So that's why you again talk to your
local agent,
and they find out where your income is, what assets you have, what you need to protect, and then they can tailor something with you and that fits whatever your needs are.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Dan, and this is very timely. He was in Canton when the gas explosion happened, and he says, I was getting my hair cut. Now I'm having problems with my ears, damage to my vehicle as well. Who's liable?
Okay, in that case, I mean, how could people know? We know the NTSB is investigating that accident, so it's still early. So I would say it's to be determined. There is reported to be a company that hit a gas line and caused a gas leak. So that is where that case is going to start. Yeah. And that's where you're going to look at. The question you're going to have there is there's so much damage. There's so many people with claims. But that's who it would be, is you're looking at the contractor. And who knows? I don't know the facts. So I'm talking about investigating. Why was that gas line hit? Why did that happen? Yeah. You know, without getting into the specifics. But that's where you would look. Okay, one more question. Michelle, hospital gave her medication that she told them she was allergic to. How does she go about filing medical malpractice? Okay. Now, that is not something that I personally handle. But on something like that, you would want to find a lawyer who handles that type of practice. I would tell you who you could call to do that. Okay. That's not a very easy case unless there's a lot of damage from the mismedication. Right. But you would have to talk to someone who handles or specializes in that area. That's not something I'm always doing. Okay. Well, we want to tell people how they can get in touch with you. I've learned so much tonight. I can't wait to go ask my husband how much liability insurance we have for our car. Law office of Chris Doscotch. You've got over 20 years of experience, and you've got an office at 2708 North Knoxville and 156 North Adams in Lewiston. Email is up there on the screen if they'd like to email you. And you're on Skype, too. I think I saw that on one of your commercials. Skype, we try to be technologically savvy or to help people out with getting their appointments. All right. Well, thanks so much for being here tonight. Is there anything else you'd like to say? No, thank you to everyone. Hope everyone has a great holiday and Merry Christmas. All right. Well, thanks so much for being here. We learned a lot. It is Ask the Attorney, and you will find us here again. Have a great evening.